soft truth number one, special operations force truth number one, humans are more important than hardware. DOD right now, writ large, at least the talk on the outside of this building, is that there's a lot of effort, there's a lot of focus that's going into conventional force, weapon systems. You know, think about naval destroyers, aircraft carriers, Army long-range fires, fighter jets for the Air Force. And we've seen the effectiveness of this just in the last 6 months. I mean, you know, Hamas goes into Israel, and what's the first thing we do? We deploy aircraft carrier groups because that's a forward projection of power. We deploy Patriot missile batteries. We put airplane squadrons forward, and all of a sudden the world's like, hey, these guys mean business. And we as an army, we as a military in America can project force more rapidly and at a greater scale than anybody in the history of warfare. And I say that with pride, and I think we all would say that. I think about this, and when I say, you know, the Navy and the Air Force, by and large, they man the arms, meaning that they have these weapons platforms, and they bring people in to then man these weapons platforms. We do it a little bit in the Army when we talk about helicopters and tanks, but the Army, by and large, arms the man, because at the end of the day, the person is required to seize and hold ground. And when we talk about conflict, it's people who inevitably have to seize and hold ground. Great people are needed to do that. Why is the soldier, the NCO really, the most important weapon system in the Army?
Yeah, so I think all the services are platform-centric. The difference is the Army's platform is its people. And people are incredibly expensive and complicated for all the leaders out there. You know exactly what I'm talking about, right? You can build a 5th-gen fighter, and you can programmatically set it up for a 5-year, you know, a FIDEP palm cycle and be pretty consistent. People are a little more difficult on the programmatic side, right? But I think it's important. It is a soft truth, and I'm not, you know, creating Army truths, but humans are more important for the Army, period. They are our platform, right? And I love some AI and I love some tech, but there will always be a human in the loop. And so I don't ever see that changing regardless of 2030, 2040 period. I think that will be our U.S. Army model going forward. I'll tell you the piece for us, because the non-commissioned officer is the asymmetric advantage. And, you know, I'm a little biased. I'm a non-commissioned officer. But you know this. I mean, look what's happening to the Russians in Ukraine right now. No non-commissioned officer corps. Our primary near-peer adversary doesn't have a non-commissioned officer corps either. And I don't see the Chinese developing one anytime soon. And so tech and modernization of things becomes that much more important for them. So I think for us it's a happy medium. The character of war has changed to the point to where advancements in technology can rue the day quickly. So how do we make sure that we don't have this massive gap in technological capability with our near peers to actually let our competitive advantage win the day on the battlefield, which is the soldier? And that's why from space to subsurface seabed matters. And so we're trying to find that balance, because people cost more now than they have ever cost before. I think you'd be surprised compared to when you were serving how much we cost right now, from, you know, barracks to housing to feeding us to all our equipment. I wish tech would get cheaper. I'm waiting for tech to hurry up and get cheaper. It's not there yet. And so we're trying to balance all of that stuff with our budget constraints, which I'm sure you're tracking where we are with that. And so it's a wicked problem. But I think it's important for everybody to always remember humans will always be our most important platform.
I remember formidable moments in my career, and two of those revolved around coming in first to my infantry platoon and second into my Special Forces ODA, where the very first person in both of those situations that I encountered was my platoon sergeant and then my team sergeant, who quickly as long as you have an open mind.
Hopefully they were both rock stars.
I owe everything to them.
Good.
I do, and I think in both of those situations, because there's a lot of correlation. A special forces team is very different than an infantry platoon, but there's a lot of correlation when you come in as a young commander.
We tend to focus on the differences. There are a lot of similarities.
And I remember in both those instances, both of those leaders took me under their wing and said, we're going to invest in you, we're going to empower you, but you got to be willing to listen too.
Yeah.
And I think by doing so, even though you're the commander, you learn so much from these folks. I mean, both of them my team sergeant on my ODA had 20 years in the group.
Yeah.
My platoon sergeant had 18 years in the Army. And so to come in and say, I've got a year and a half, and subsequently I've got 3.5 years, you've got to take a step back and listen to these senior NCOs who have experience, they have knowledge, and they're willing to transfer that knowledge to you and empower and help you grow. Talk for a second about that relationship and how the relationship between those senior NCOs and those young officers who come in, who may be in command, how does that work?
Wow. So if there's such thing as an art and science, it's in that relationship, right? That's why I made the statement. I hope your platoon sergeant and your first ODA team sergeant were rock stars, because again, it's not always the case, right? We strive for excellence. There's no such thing as perfection, and again, at scale, not everybody's a Heisman Trophy winner, so you get different levels of capability, and then I think it's fair to acknowledge the fact that we all go through seasons in life too. So I've been a different non-commissioned officer in healthier states in my career over the time. Spent some time as an angry NCO, and thankfully I didn't stay in that state, right? So it just depends on when our paths cross, that experience you have. So. But that command relationship, it is really the art side of leadership. So what I have found over time is the non-commissioned officer, and it sounds like that's your experience with both of those, was you had a very empathetic NCO that was all about making you successful as the commander, because they knew you were the commander, you were in charge, and it was their job to make you successful, because then the unit would be successful, and then we would be successful in the missions that we were all handed, right? That's that symbiotic relationship that really, Jim Collins and everybody else can write books about, but the art of execution and how that happens, it's different in each relationship. I've had a lot of different commanders over my time, and I've had to adjust how I've led as a non-commissioned officer based off of that commander style. That's art. Yeah. There's no handbook that told me step 7 when the commander does this is skip to step 12 and recommend this. That's science. And I think the people that struggle in this space, in particular the non-commissioned officers, again, because you're the commander, I have to be the chameleon to the commander. I gotta have enough emotional intelligence. I mean, there's a lot to this, right? But that's more the art side of this, and that's why I'm really passionate about talent management, because once you go to the battalion and above level, when you don't get this right, it can have drastic consequences on the lethality and real readiness of a unit. Platoon sergeant level, you can get away with a little bit more. But when you have, that's why I'm a big fan of the CAP process. I've been assessed my entire career, so I don't know anything else. But as far as the big Army, it is a good thing. We're developing better battalion and brigade level commanders and brigade level sergeant majors through the CAP program. But part of that is developing them earlier, because the art side of this, it's a little hard to work on the art side of this by the time you're 40 plus years old. You're kind of baked. You're kind of like that chocolate chip cookie's overcooked. You're not putting it back in the oven to make it, you know what I mean? It's so getting left, and this is where PME, we're taking a really good wire brush to PME, to all our professional military education. CSM Harris is leading that for us at TRADOC, because the sooner you can get to young Staff Sergeant Weimer, about the art and science of the command team relationship, well, come on. You're going to have a better outcome than the out years.
That's leadership from day one. I think we do a good job of that overall, and it's nice to hear you say that that's something the Army's thinking about.
Oh, yeah.
How do we really drive this home? I had that conversation with someone you know well in this building now, but Sergeant Major Troy Black, who I had a chance to sit down with last year.
Yeah.
Amazing
Good
guy.
man.
But we had that conversation.
Warfighter.
Absolutely. But you go and you see these posters, and it's all about leadership from day one. Leadership from day one. And great organizations adopt that culture. They say, we don't wait until you're at a certain level to then say, well, you're a leader now.
Yeah.
Let's figure it out, because by then it is almost too late. You have to start that from the very beginning, and driving that home, creating programs that do that and show even that person out on the street, hey, if I join this organization, I'm going to be a leader from day one, starts to breed that culture.
So back to personal discipline. Who's the first person we all have to learn how to lead? Ourselves. Which goes back to personal discipline, which goes back to, am I at a minimum compliant to what the standards are? And then the sooner I go from compliance to commitment, the sooner I really start to understand the art and science of a command team relationship as a non-commissioned officer, right? It's a journey. But if you don't ever learn to lead yourself, good luck trying to lead company, battalion, brigade, ODA, troop, whatever. It's not gonna work. And you've seen it. You see it fail. When people outrun their headlights in leadership, they probably weren't even leading themselves very well.